You didn't wake up one day and decide to stop trusting yourself. It happened slowly, quietly. In the small moments that didn't look like trauma, but felt like retreat, every time you stayed silent to avoid conflict, every time you said yes when your whole body whispered no, every time you looked outside yourself for permission, for approval, for direction. You didn't lose your confidence, you gave it away, one silent compromise at a time, and now you call it anxiety, you call it overthinking, you call it I don't know who I am anymore. But what it really is self-betrayal, stacked quietly, year after year. Ever wondered why your younger self felt more fearless than you do now? It's not because life got harder, it's because the noise got louder, the opinions, the pressure, the constant bending of your truth to fit into someone else's version of enough. But here's the thing, you don't need to go find your confidence, because you never really lost it. It's still there, underneath the performance, the masks, the hesitation. It's waiting for you to come back. And today, with help from ancient Stoic wisdom, we're going to rebuild it, quietly, powerfully, one truth at a time. Stay with me. Let me tell you about Alex. When he was younger, he didn't second-guess his voice. He didn't flinch when eyes turned toward him. He didn't shrink to fit in. He laughed loud, asked bold questions, made mistakes, and got up anyway. Because back then, he still believed that who he was enough. But little by little, that version of him began to fade. A comment from a teacher, a rejection that stung, a silence after he spoke the truth. He started playing it safe. He stopped raising his hand. He learned to read the room before showing up in it. And now, at 29, he walks into meetings and wonders if he's allowed to speak. He filters every thought. He doubts every instinct. He apologizes for existing before anyone ever questions him. But here's the truth. The confident Alex didn't die. He just got buried under layers of fear, performance, and approval seeking. And maybe so did you. Because confidence doesn't disappear. It just goes silent when you forget how to listen to yourself. So today, we're not going to chase noise. We're going to find stillness. And in that stillness, reclaim your voice. Lesson 1. Remember who you were before the doubt moved in. You weren't born afraid. You weren't born apologetic. You weren't born second-guessing your worth. As a child, you didn't need validation to run toward what lit you up. You didn't ask if your laugh was too loud or if your ideas were too much. You just lived, curious, bold, unfiltered. But then the world happened. Someone called you too intense. Someone made you feel small for being excited. Someone rolled their eyes when you shared your dreams. And that's when it began. The shrinking, the masking, the small, subtle exits from your true self. You didn't lose your confidence all at once. You traded it away, one compromised truth at a time. You learned to read the room before showing up in it. You learned to speak in a tone that wouldn't make others uncomfortable. You learned to perform, not to protect your heart, but to protect their comfort. And somewhere in that performance, you forgot what your real voice even sounded like. The Stoics understood this. They didn't believe in pleasing everyone. They believed in being aligned with virtue and letting that be enough. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it, and it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now." You've been judging yourself through lenses that were never yours. Filters built from other people's fears, and you've carried those lenses so long, you started calling them truth. But they're not truth, they're just repetition, and it's time to break that pattern. So pause and ask yourself, who were you before the world told you who to be? Before you became the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who never makes trouble. Before you learned that safety sometimes meant silence. Because confidence isn't something you need to build from scratch. It's something you can remember. You don't need to invent a stronger version of you. You need to return to the one who never doubted their light until someone else did. And when you remember who you were, you'll realize that version of you was never gone, just waiting patiently for your permission to come home. Lesson 2. Stop apologizing for your power. You weren't born afraid to shine. You were taught that your light should be dimmed to make others more comfortable in the dark. You learned, not from truth but from survival, that being loud or bold or too expressive would cost you connection. So you made yourself smaller, softer, safer. You bit your tongue, even when the words were truth. You softened your opinions to sound more likable. You waited for someone to give you permission to be who you already are. But let me ask you this. How long are you going to keep apologizing for your intensity, for your presence, for your voice? Because every time you shrink, you send yourself the same message. You are too much. And the longer you live by that lie, the more you start to believe that playing small is a form of politeness. But it's not. Playing small is self-rejection in slow motion. The Stoics didn't believe in arrogance, but they never confused confidence with cruelty. They taught discipline, not disappearance. Epictetus wrote, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." That's not a quote for someone who hides. That's a call to step into your design without shame. You don't need to yell. You don't need to dominate, but you do need to stop flinching every time your truth gets close to the surface. Because when you keep apologizing for your fire, you become smoke. Hard to grasp, easy to lose. And I'll say this as clearly as I can. The world does not need a quieter version of you. It needs your full form, rooted, focused, unapologetically alive. So next time you feel yourself shrinking, ask, am I being humble or am I hiding? And remember, your light is not the problem. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Lesson 3, clarity is greater than confidence. You keep waiting to feel ready, to feel sure, to feel confident enough to finally move. But what if I told you, confidence isn't the starting line, it's the result. It's what shows up after you've already chosen clarity. Because most people don't lack bravery, they lack direction. They're not lost because they're weak. They're lost because they've never taken the time to ask themselves, what do I actually want? What do I actually stand for? And without those answers, of course you doubt. Of course you hesitate. Of course you look around and wait for someone to hand you a map to a life that only you are meant to walk. But here's what the Stoics knew thousands of years ago. That clarity is a muscle, and it grows when you sit still long enough to hear your own voice over the noise. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." So stop asking for more confidence. Start seeking clarity, because when you know what matters to you, really know, you don't need loudness. You don't need cheerleaders. You don't need certainty. You need one simple thing, a decision to act, even if you're scared, a decision to choose, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed, a decision to move, even if no one claps. Because clarity doesn't eliminate fear, it gives you something stronger than fear, a compass. And once you hold that compass, you realize confidence is a byproduct, but clarity is the fire. It burns quiet, but it never lies. Lesson 4, master what you can control. The fastest way to lose confidence is to spend your energy trying to control what was never yours, their reactions, their timelines, their emotions, their approval. You bend yourself backwards, trying to be liked, to be understood, to be good enough for people who barely know themselves. And slowly, you disconnect from your own center. But here's what the Stoics knew: control is not the goal. Control is the filter. It's what separates noise from responsibility. Epictetus said, "Some things are up to us, and some are not." That's it. That one sentence can save you years of confusion. What's in your control? Your choices, your focus, your effort, your attitude, your breathing, your honesty. That's it. Not the past, not the future, not the weather, not their opinion, not how they interpret your truth. So why do we spend 90% of our energy gripping what we were never meant to carry? You don't need to control the outcome. You just need to control how you show up. You don't need to manipulate the path. You just need to move one step at a time with integrity. That's where your confidence lives. Not in guarantees, not in results, but in the quiet knowing. I did what was mine to do, and I let go of the rest. Because real strength isn't about bending reality to your will. It's about aligning your will to what's real. And that's where peace begins, not in control, but in clear responsibility. Lesson 5. Humility is not shrinking. You've been told over and over to be humble, to be modest, to not brag, to stay grounded. And somewhere along the way, that message got distorted. You started believing that humility meant you had to dim your light so others wouldn't feel small in its presence. That confidence was arrogance. That certainty was pride. That taking up space made you selfish. So you stopped speaking boldly, you laughed softer. You showed less. You became someone who blends in, even though your soul was built to stand out. But here's the truth. Real humility has nothing to do with making yourself small. Real humility is knowing you're powerful and choosing to use that power with grace. It's knowing you could dominate, but instead you choose to serve, to build, to inspire, without ever apologizing for what you carry inside. Seneca said, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." That's humility, not silence from fear, but silence from mastery, from the ability to act with intention, not insecurity. Shrinking does not serve the world. Playing small doesn't protect anyone. It only teaches people that in order to be good, they must abandon their fullness. But that's not goodness. That's guilt dressed as virtue. So let's rewrite it. You don't need to be the loudest in the room, but you do need to stop apologizing for even being in the room. You don't need to shout, but you do need to show up fully rooted real. Because real humility isn't about pretending you're less. It's about knowing you're more and choosing to embody it quietly, without shame. Lesson 6. Real confidence comes from alignment, not from loudness, not from performance, not from likes, followers, or applause. Confidence that depends on validation is not confidence, it's addiction to approval. And when that approval disappears, so does your sense of self. But there's a different kind of confidence, one you don't have to fake, one you don't have to chase. It's quiet, it's stable, it's built in the dark, through choices that only you will ever see. It's the confidence of alignment, of saying what you mean, of living what you preach, of knowing that even if no one sees you, you still respect the person you are becoming. The Stoics never said, be liked. They said, be integral. Be someone who moves with inner consistency, not mood, not noise, not popularity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter." Not their praise, not their criticism, not the outcome, just the right thing. Because when your values and your behavior match, you stop feeling like an imposter. You stop fearing exposure. You stop questioning your worth. Every time something external shifts, you realize you were never meant to feel confident all the time. You were meant to feel congruent, like your life reflects who you really are. That's what creates peace. That's what builds trust. That's what earns your own respect, which is the only kind that can't be taken away. So the next time you wonder how to feel more confident, don't look outward, look inward. Are you aligned? Are you honest? Are you proud of who you are when no one's watching? Because if the answer is yes, then the rest is just noise. So here we are. Not with hype, not with empty motivation, but with 6 quiet shifts that bring you back to what you've always had, but slowly forgot. Because confidence isn't a trick. It's not a mask. It's not about being fearless or always knowing what to say. It's about becoming someone you no longer betray. Every day, you're making a decision to honor your voice or to silence it, to live by your values, or to outsource your worth to people who will never understand what it costs you to perform. You've been taught that confidence comes from the way you look, the way you talk, how much they like you, but the Stoics taught something else. They taught that confidence comes from owning your response, protecting your peace, and choosing to act even when the world doesn't clap. It comes from alignment, when your thoughts, your values, and your behavior stand in the same room and finally agree. So no, this isn't the kind of video that makes you feel pumped, but maybe it makes you feel seen and, more importantly, clear. Because clarity is the beginning of courage, and courage is the beginning of everything else. If this helped, you breathe deeper, or remember a version of yourself you're ready to return to, subscribe. This is where we rebuild, not louder, but deeper. Reflection challenge. Drop in the comments. What's one behavior, belief, or habit you're done apologizing for? Next video. How to stop emotional spirals using a 2,000-year-old Stoic trick that takes less than 60 seconds but could shift your entire day. And remember, Stoicism philosophy: clarity in the chaos, depth over noise, presence over performance.